Got it. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and board members.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Before we proceed with our regular calendars, there is a member of the public wishing to provide comment on item number 12. I will call up Reverend Marlene Oliver. You wish to speak on an item? You signed up? Okay, now is your time. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't realize how strict the meeting was as far as items, but living in NYCHA over 50 years, and now I'm living in senior development for the last 8 years. We did get a new roof, which I thank you for. Unfortunately, in giving that new roof, they stopped in 2014 in April. They were supposed to get a new elevator that was destroyed by the leaking of the roof for over 20 years in the elevators. But because we had a superintendent at that time that felt that we didn't need the elevators, somehow we were moved and shipped somewhere else. I don't know when we're going to get new elevators. But in this new money that's coming in for repairs, I hope that we are being considered soon for replacement of our elevators. I also have a packet here that I will leave on other items that I want to talk about, but since it's not on the agenda, I won't speak on it. But I would like to know, when will Middletown Plaza be getting new elevators? That's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. You can leave it with me. Thank you. Chair, that concludes our public comments portion, and we may proceed with the regular calendars. We'll start with a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting that took place on January 27th.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes for January 27th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We may proceed now with the chair's report. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. It's wonderful to see you all here on this somewhat rainy and snowy day. I just want to provide the board and members of the public a recap on some of our activities over the course of the last month or so. As you know, we have been deeply immersed in implementation of next generation NYCHA. Part of our development strategies as part of the plan include conversations in several communities in NYCHA neighborhoods, which is where we will be doing either 100% affordable development or 50-50 development. Last month, we were invited to be part of, to appear before the Public Housing Committee of the City Council, chaired by Councilman Richie Torres. The hearing took place at the Homes Development. Myself, General Counsel David Farber, and Vice President of Development Nicole Ferrer provided testimony not only about the objectives of Next Generation NYCHA, but specifically the work around Next Generation neighborhoods. It was not unlike most of these conversations, quite dynamic, but I think another part of our job of trying to tell the narrative of the challenges that the Housing Authority faces and our proposal and solutions for how to put us on a more sustainable path. I think it's important for members of the public to know our next City Council hearing is March 17th. This is our annual executive budget testimony where really it's a state of NYCHA address, both talking about our financial performance to date, but overall our analysis of where we're going. So that is March 17th at 10 a.m. in the City Council chambers. As I mentioned, continued conversations, community visioning sessions happening in our 2 50/50 or NYCHA neighborhood sites, Wyckoff in Burham Hill, in the Burham Hill neighborhood in downtown Brooklyn, and Holmes on the Upper East Side. We continue to have a series of meetings with those residents, everything from smaller sessions, and this was at the request of residents, really moving away from the larger town hall, come one, come all, to much more focused subject matter conversations with residents about the repair needs of their development, about the process of development, about the process of ULURP, or the uniformed land process that some development has to go through. And so those conversations are ongoing, and we are I think seeing some really interesting conversations emerge from those discussions with residents in a much more, I think, comfortable setting than we may have seen in previous instances. So those efforts will continue. We'll have more to report back as those meetings continue throughout the spring. A really important part of the work that we are doing is really trying to tell the story of some of the tools that we have begun to use to help preserve our portfolio. In December 2014, you'll recall we closed on what we call the Section 8 recap deal, or the formerly named Triborough Partnership, where we entered a partnership with a private partner for 10 Section 8 buildings. I'm pleased to say that not only has construction begun, but has progressed such that those residents have new kitchens and bathrooms. You'll see on my bottom right, your bottom left photo of some of the outdoor spaces. This is Millbank Frawley, which is on Madison Avenue between 118th and 119th. This lot, I can personally attest, was a garbage-strewn hangout for all kinds of, not great things. And it was a real eyesore in the community. You can see that there are now raised plant beds. There's a beautiful new play area. I've seen the interiors of some of the apartments. They're amazing. We brought together elected officials, I believe some resident leaders, to actually go and see for yourself themselves what this partnership has meant for the almost 1,000 residents who live in these buildings. And I think, again, it is another way to tell the story of what can happen when we bring in new resources to help preserve affordable housing in New York City. We earlier last week released a request for proposals for what would be our first rental assistance demonstration project. This is a signature Obama housing policy tool from HUD that is being used across the country, again, to preserve public housing, to bring in new resources. We submitted our first application to RAD. You may know that there is a congressional cap on the number of applications that this program can receive. It's 185,000, I believe, and they have met that cap. We got in underneath that for our 1,400 unit project at Ocean Bayside, out in the Rockaways. We expect more than $174 million of repairs to occur at these 24 buildings. Really, the team that has been engaged for more than about a year and a half, led by our development team, our resident engagement folks, operations, capital, have done such a good job that the residents across the street in the smaller development are asking if they can be a part of the RAD application as well. So I think, and we've had HUD come and talk to us and opine on the RFP. This is out on the street now for development partners. We expect a robust response, and those are due later in the quarter. Again, we're very eager to move quickly here, given that we have a national election happening. So we'll be moving to really work with our federal partners to make sure we can choose a partner of choice to help preserve these buildings. Quickly, a couple of other major things that I know I've shared with you, and you've probably read. We officially formally launched the Fund for Public Housing. As you know, this is an independent, private 501c3 that really is the first, I think, of its kind, really working to support the housing authorities move from sort of direct services to a more innovation approach to support the people, place, and work of how we support our residents. Really fantastic piece in the New York Times. The response has been quite interesting and quite really encouraging. There's also been a 3-part series written by the social scientist Professor Nick Bloom on kind of the history of public housing in New York City and really looking at looking at our buildings, looking at issues around design, etc. So if folks have not had a chance to take a look at that, I would encourage people to read. He also has a book and a really interesting exhibit that's now at Hunter College on the history of public housing in New York City. So again, if you think about one of the objectives of Next Generation NYCHA was really to expand the number of people talking about the value and importance of public housing to New York City. I think we are starting to see that happen. So just a quick overview of some of the things that we've been up to. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have or concerns before I pass it over to our general manager. No? Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to share with the board the performance activities for the month of January, as well as to give an update on the Audit blast response to the board, to the public. Again, looking at performance major indicators around our financial condition, specifically rent collection, work order status, our vacancy operations, and our customer service. On the rent collection, I'd like to make a note that we had actually looked at, as part of Next Generation NYCHA, as a major goal to look at our funding and how we look at the critical issue of rent. As you may know, we've reestablished internal committees working with our interagency partners to look at the best ways in which we can facilitate the collection of rent. One of the things that we found out in the early days of our exploration was that there were several different ways in which rent was being calculated, which meant for a little confusion both internally and externally. What came out of that discussion was the agreement to approach the calculation of rent in the format that HUD requires us to. It's the tenant accounts receivable format. That decision was made in late fall. The agreement was to close out the fiscal year in our current way of reporting rent, but to start this fiscal year, January, using this new calculation. So using the new calculation for the month of January, we had collected, we billed $115 million and collected $80 million, which was a 70% collection rate. The difference between the two basically is in the old system, which was the gross potential rent system. We were looking at current month billed versus current month collected. This system, which is now recognized by HUD and by a lot of industry, private property managers, looks at cumulatively all the money that is billed and all the money is collected on an annual basis. So with that, we showed a 70% collection rate for the month of January. Just to put things in context, though, using the old system, the collection rate that I've been reporting was at 76%. So again, it just shows how you can calculate things differently to create different sort of percentage results. Board, this is the type, from this point forward, this is the type of reporting that we'll be doing on the tenant accounts receivable, and we'll be holding it our benchmarking according to this.
I just make
Please,
one, I think just a correction. It's not that we've been calculating rent incorrectly, we've been reporting it. Right. So from a tenant perspective, the calculations obviously are based on 30% of the household income.
Thank you, Chair.
That's clear. This is just about a reporting
internal
issue.
reporting.
Got it.
Thank you for clarifying that. All right. On a work order overview, again, tracking about 143,000 work orders in our total inventory. A deeper dive in terms of the increases from December to January. Note that of the 4 weeks in January, there was no real substantial difference in terms of the amount of work orders created and the amount of work orders responded to. However, in the first week of January, we'll probably look at it as a holiday lag. There was an increase in work orders dramatically for that period that actually I think was the cause of this particular bump. And again, to note that our work order count is also conditioned about how many days we have to respond to work orders. There were two holidays in the month of January. So again, this is a figure that's very much embedded in our metrics around improving or decreasing the overall amount of work orders. It's tied to our larger operational plan. But as you can probably see from the last few months, it is now sort of stabilizing around what we are receiving for work orders and what we're able to respond to. On the emergency work orders, this is a situation where in the month of January, we received, we actually had an increase from December, from 23,500 work orders in December to over 28,000 work orders in January. This is a 19% overall increase in the number of work orders. I think one of the things that we looked at in the deeper dive, of those, over 20,000 work orders were responded to well within the 24-hour commitment. However, 25% of those were tied specifically to a dramatic increase in heat and hot water. This was there were a couple of very cold periods during the month of January, and it suggested that during that period, we were not able to respond to those work orders within that 24-hour period, bringing our overall response time above our committed 24-hour period. This is, I think, something no guaranteeing because we are still in the middle of the winter, but we believe that this is one of these that is a bit of an anomaly. You can see the other spike too. In October, we reported that on top of the increase in lighting, there was also the beginning of heat and hot water season. So as we were receiving more work orders for heat and hot water, we actually have a corresponding bump in terms of our ability to respond to those. On the maintenance service level, this again is one of the things that is one of the most important indicators that we are tracking. It's the time for our maintenance response from the time a resident reports a work order need and our ability to respond to it on maintenance. This is not tied to skill trade, just to be clear about this. This is on routine maintenance work orders. On the skill trade, it continues to be one that hovers above what we believe what we should be at. And again, this is one of those in which is embedded into a variety of initiatives that we're looking at how we plan and how we logistically manage our skill trades. And we believe this is one that we not hope to, we plan to have a dramatic decreases in the service levels for this calendar year. On the apartment turnaround time, this is one in which in the month of January, we actually turned over 432 apartments, meaning we took apartments that were off the rent rolls and added it, compared to January in 2015, in which we had 296 apartments turned over. That's 136 more apartments that we've done during this period. So this is a number that shows a dramatic increase from the 59.3 in December to the 60.6. However, it needs to be noted that this is not necessarily a bad indicator. In my future reports, I will delineate the differences. What this is really starting to reflect is we're tackling the longer outstanding vacancies that have been out there. Vacancies have been for a year, or even longer. When you add that to our overall calculations, it bumps up our average turnaround time. Also, that we're also doing a more focused job in tying the needs of the disabled, the 504 units, to units. And that's actually one that is a marketing issue. So it's not a turnaround time in terms of just being able to fix a unit. It's identifying those clients, those residents that need that unit, and making sure that they're happy with it. It's one in which actually is a task that we're taking a finer approach to. And those are longer term units that again, because we are filling them up, it's showing a higher increase in the turnaround days. Future reports, I'm going to attempt to share with the board what we consider to be routine, to show what our average turnaround could and should be within our standards of 30 days versus those longer terms, just to give kind of a side-by-side on that. But this is one that's going to increase. We have over 200 units that are targeted in our inventory right now with mayor funding for longer term vacancies. So it's not inconceivable that 60 days will actually be even higher on an overall average moving forward. But again, it's something we're tackling, something that's been a long-standing issue with us. On customer satisfaction, the customer call center put out 1,686 calls in January. 1,536 residents responded, saying that the work was satisfactory. Again, this is a number that's sort of tracking. I quickly note that it's good that 3 out of 4 of our residents believe that the work is being done. However, the 25% still becomes the issue, because those are the ones that get in the newspapers. Those are the ones that have been the kinds of things that have been a negative perception to our work. However, I think in terms of just kind of recognizing that with over 2 million work orders we do per year, that the majority of them are done with customer satisfaction. I'd say that in the same breath, saying that's not okay. We have to raise this number. The other thing that's going on now is a concurrent customer satisfaction exercise is within our quality control unit. It's a unit we've been rolling out, and again, I think we'll be adding to this report a sort on how our quality control unit is reporting on customer satisfaction or work that's been done.
So this graph shows that there's also a reduction in total calls made, right? So you're making less calls now than
well. I have a feeling this is tied to the other reporting I did in terms of the month of January and the call center is actually, they received literally thousands and thousands of calls in the month of January. So it's as they're receiving calls, it may have impacted their ability to put the calls back out for.
Got it.
All right. Very briefly, I want to share with you the Housing Authority's response to the Arctic blast the weekend of February 19th through Monday, Friday, that's backwards, the 15th through the 19th. And again, the objectives were to maintain heat and hot water, our timely response to mitigate issues, and to make sure that we're coordinating with our partners to fulfill our role as a partner in the mayor's overall effort to respond to this crisis. We have over 2,000 or nearly 2,000 boilers in our overall inventory. Of that, part of our last physical needs assessment noted that almost half of those boilers are past their useful life. I say that just to say the challenges that we have in terms of maintaining heat and hot water in our inventory. So during the peak blast, we responded to calls from over 90 at 90 developments. We had over 200 heating technicians, plumbers, and electricians and welders and outside vendors working each day around the clock to respond to these. There was also a 24-hour watch team that was specifically looking at our mobile boilers and how we would deal with outages. And then we actually had our contractors on standby. One thing to note, there were no major main breaks that reported to this Arctic blast. It would have been something that would have compounded our response if that had occurred. During this period, 12,180 work orders were created. 9,000 were canceled. What this is noting is that we have many, many calls from a single building regarding heat and hot water. As we complete that, as we fix the water for that entire development, for that entire building, we would actually cancel out the calls for that development. Many of these calls were found after responding to it that there really wasn't a heat and hot water issue. It was a comfort issue in many cases. And it's something that we're now looking to do a better job of trying to remind folks that there's a requirement that we have around providing heat that may not be as warm as people would like, but it does fulfill a basic requirement. So during the same period, there were 6 major heat and hot water outages. These are ones that lasted more than 2 hours. Clinton, Stapleton, Levitt, Patterson, Independence, and Samuel. And there were 2 major hot water outages. These are outages that lasted an average of 11 hours in our response to Hope Gardens and Palmanock. So these are very complex, some more difficult response issues that we had during that period. Finally, just a quick overview of what from the various department level on operations. We had extra staff, specifically the technicians around air heating and oil and plumbing, electrical, electricians for high voltages and CCTV, welding, and our central shop maintenance. Available, our capital program, we're looking at providing watch teams to look at our mobile boilers. They actually did outreach by phone to the vulnerable residents in the Sandy impacted developments during this period. The supply management team was available to provide the type of backup responses to parts or services that were needed during this period. Our intergovernmental team worked on getting emails out to the elected officials and to make sure that that all of our partners knew proactively what we were up to. Our CCC effort had mandatory overtime for staff to ensure the adequate staffing. From midnight on the 16th through the next day, we actually had 10,600 heat hot water calls that were received. On emergency preparedness, this team looked at making sure that we were tied into the city's emergency preparedness and also provided interagency communications. And on communications, the communications department did, I think, a really incredible job of getting ahead of the issues by making sure that the public and our residents knew the kind of resources that were available to respond to this emergency, and to make sure that we were both internally and externally connected to our residents as well as to the public at large. That board completes the report of the general manager.
Couple of things, if I may. This report, I need to get it in advance. Is it possible that you could put that on the iPad the same as we get the resolutions in advance?
Yes, and I think I did talk about that. The pre-board meetings to actually have to add to that agenda a presentation.
Because, to sit here and to hear you and to try to think of the questions that I might have, it would be easier if I had it in advance, that I could read it, digest it, and any questions that I have, I could formulate them in advance, and that would be helpful for me. The other thing is on the rent collection. Rent collection is a big issue for me because I know I have to pay my rent every month, and I feel like other people should do the same thing. You said that the rent was a 70% collection rate, but HUD goal would be 97.5%. My question is, what are we going to do differently to get closer to the 97.5% that's expected?
Right now, we actually have a variety of initiatives that are tied to approaches to how we notify residents about the rent responsibilities, how we work with the residents to tie it to when they actually get money in to make it easier for them to pay. We're looking at different techniques around swiping stuff at the sites and looking at different ways of it. There's a variety of different kind of initiatives that are tied specifically around that. And again, on a every 2 months, we do one for work orders and one for rent. Every 2 months, we come together with our computer-aided management system. We call it STAT here, in which we actually look at the data and driven by the data per site, we start to tie down who are the good performers and who are the bad performers, try to figure out what we need to do to support the property managers specifically at the poor performing sites, and learning from the good sites what they are doing to make things better. So right now we recognize, and that's why I preface this as part of a major initiative around our next gen NYCHA goal around funds. And it's something that this task force has been at pretty much hard to look at for the last 6 months. And we have been, again, there has been steady improvement on this. When you look at year from year, this is just a different approach to reporting, not in terms of how we calculate, but on the reporting. But even in this reporting, and I didn't have time to do it for this report, I believe if we did a TARS report from last year versus a TARS report for this year, it would also show improvements. So we are moving toward that goal. It's a very difficult goal, by the way, in terms of public housing across the country. Very few housing authorities get to that level of 97.5. Smaller housing authorities, those that have just seniors in them, for example, there's kinds of housing authorities that actually get close to that. But for any big city housing authority, this is a big challenge. I think we are moving in the right direction.
Have we tried to look at a profile of people who are chronically delinquent, or try to ascertain any reasons why people are just constantly negligent in paying their rent? It's almost like it's a pattern of behavior. You know, once you get away with doing it, you're going to continue with that pattern. How do we, break the cycle?
One of the things that David Farber, our general counsel, has been working, and his team is working closer with our property managers and doing sort of trainings with the property managers to understand what the relationship between non-payment of rent and our ability to enforce our lease around that. So I think we are starting to do a deeper dive in terms of the causes. And I think one of them is the greatest tool housing authorities have as property managers is the lease agreement. And so making sure that our property managers know legally what our responsibilities and our opportunities are around rent collection, I think was also starting to happen right now in terms of training.
But I do think it is a tension that we face as well, because we have 60,000 people in the homeless shelter and shelters at night, and we, are part of the administration's response to housing homeless families. And so I think this is one of those areas where, while it is in our control to do better in collecting rent, we are working with other city agencies to try and support those families who might be chronically rent delinquent, who may be in the private sector, after being 90 days delinquent, you would move on an eviction process. We're trying to work with HRA and others to still be able to act in our role as a landlord, but also get the resources that might be due to the authority. So it is a tension because, we clearly need and expect people to live up to their contract. But we also are and have to be sensitive to the fact that we don't want to increase the number of families who may or may not end up in the city's homeless shelter. So this is, I think, as policymakers, this is one of the tensions that we're trying to, and I think as management, trying to identify what are those levers that we have within our control to get the result that we want, while also being sensitive to the larger policy.
I'm trying to think of an agency. We had a group that came out to the management offices, and they've been going around to different developments, so that if you are chronically delinquent and you go into the office and you meet with those people, they will help you either to pay the rent to catch you up, or they will give you some kind of management plan so that you could learn how to manage your finances so that you could pay your rent. There are outside of NYCHA organizations that really do that. And when they have come into the developments, I mean, it's been standing room only with all the people who flood in trying to get the support.
And we're partnering with some of those groups through our REASE program. And I think the challenge for us is how do we scale that up? Because we have many people who I think fall into that category. So, and that is an effort that we're working with as well.
Okay.
To clarify the numbers of it for me, so the total due includes both arrears and arrears and current rent due.
On the TAR system?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so is there a sense of how much of that is arrears?
Oh yeah, it's quite a bit. Yeah, so that gets back to the other question in terms of trying to catch up with folks that have larger outstanding balances. But in fairness, we can't just pretend they're not there. They have to be targeted. But there is, when we do our stats, our working with the property managers, we want to incentivize our managers to make sure that what is currently being billed is currently being collected. So we're doing both at the same time. We want to make sure that our managers are making sure we're up to speed, and we're doing things like the counseling and like working with HRA and others to assist in, and also working with legal to make sure that we actually have ways in which there are payment plans, et cetera, to start to tackle that larger issue of longstanding arrearages.
Could I just interject with the heat I know that we're in the last part of February and March is very unpredictable. And I saw on here where you had a collection of developments that were having problems during the time that we were having this Arctic weather. However, I know that we can't always get all of them, but there were quite a few that didn't have heat. And also Con Ed, I don't know how y'all are doing this with certain developments, because in certain developments you're still using oil heat, and in certain developments you're using gas heat. And in the development where Con Edison has not been doing what they supposed to do, because they were supposed to come to a special meeting, which they did not show up, and people are either getting too much heat or not getting any heat at all. And that needs to be brought to some kind of solution. And I will speak to you later after the meeting about that.
Okay.
But the heat is still a very big issue in public housing.
Yeah.
And you didn't get all of the developments that were having problems, because up in Grant Housing, it was even on New York 1. They came in there, she had all these pots of water, and she said she had to sleep in clothing, 2 and 3 blankets underneath her, because she's not getting heat. So we need to address that problem, because winter is not really over yet. Okay, all right.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Chair, we may proceed with the regular calendar. Item number 1.
Good morning. I'm Bob Morano, NYCHA's Chief Information Officer. This item is requesting an amendment to fund a 1-year renewal of an existing contract with Carasoft. Carasoft is a reseller of semantic software. NYCHA uses semantic software for a number of functions, such as antivirus protection, storage backups, archiving, data protection, and software patching. The initial term of the 2013 contract was for 3 years with a 2-year renewal option. Today's amendment is requesting approval for the first renewal year.
Just a question, why we are not doing 2 years?
The company is splitting up. The semantic company is splitting up into two entities, and this is all they're willing to do with us right now. So we're going to have to renegotiate, next year around this time with them.
Renegotiate or rebid?
Might have to rebid, yeah. If they don't come back and we're not able to use this vehicle anymore, we're going to have to rebid.
So I would just encourage us to do sort of work backwards from when the expiration of this.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we always do.
So that we're not forced to take a higher, number because we're, without an option.
Actually, they gave us a break on this year's contract. It's down from, it was trending about $550,000. It's down to $374,000 this year through negotiations with them, because they were splitting up and they were having these issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Louis Ponce, Senior Vice President of Operations for Support Services. I'll be presenting items 2 and 3. Both of these items are requesting authorization to enter into 2-year requirement contracts with New York Boiler Incorporated to cover the boroughs of Manhattan and the Bronx. These contracts provide for boiler welding and repair services at various developments, as identified during preventive maintenance or as deficiencies are identified on our boilers and related appurtenances. New York Boiler shall provide all necessary labor, supervision, material, scaffolding, and equipment for these repairs. These are 2-year requirement contracts with a 1-year renewal option to be exercised at the authority's sole discretion. New York Boiler is qualified to perform this type of work. They have successfully completed approximately $9.7 million worth of these type of services for the authority in the past 5 years. They have also indicated in their Section 3 hiring plan that they plan to hire 1 resident for each of the contracts in the title of a boiler service welder. Item number 2 is for Manhattan. The not to exceed amount is $1,873,343.50. Item number 3 is for the Bronx, and the not to exceed amount is $1,511,456.13. Respectfully recommend approval of these 2 contracts.
Good morning. My name is Brian Clark. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations for Property Management. I'll be presenting items 4 through 9. So item 4 is a 2-year requirement contract. This is a contract that supports our break-fix operation. So if we have intercoms that break down in Brooklyn, this contract is specific to Brooklyn, the vendor will respond and make the repairs. Authorization is requested to award this contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, CLC Communications Incorporated. This requirement contract also provides for 1-year renewal option to be exercised at the authority's sole discretion.
Are there service level requirements built into our contract with them?
Yes, there are. So once we notify them, they have to respond within 24 hours and then make the repair within 48 after they've diagnosed it.
In 24 and then 48. And if they don't, what happens?
If they don't, then we can take contract action against them. I'd have to review the contract to see whether or not we have liquidated damages in there.
I raised this because this obviously is a major concern for residents, particularly around issues of safety. And, I think the faster we can, things are going to break, we get that. But the faster we can respond to this particular issue, I think will really go a long way for residents, sort of perception and reality around the issue of safety.
Yep.
So, and if they are not performing, then we need to get better contractors.
Yes. Yeah. The CLC has actually been employed with the agency for a number of years, and we've been happy with their services up to date.
And do we track, just last question, do we track their performance? Right, so if they aren't making the 24 to 48 sort of hurdle.
Yeah, so these all their work is actually tracked within our work order system,
Okay.
so we can report out on it.
Okay, that'd be great.
I'm just thinking, Brian, I was at the many meetings in Wyckoff, and that's one of the big issues. They're constantly talking about the intercoms don't work.
Yeah. So Wyckoff actually. So this contract is more for our conventional intercom systems. So we have approximately 32 developments that are on the layered access system that we have at Wyckoff. This contract is to support the existing, or I should say, legacy intercom systems. At Wyckoff, I can provide you with a quick update. Quick update there, because we were actually able to make the repairs, and that system is fully functioning now.
When you say there's different kinds of intercom systems, I'm thinking even where I live, intercoms don't work. They haven't worked in years.
Yeah. So
That's the one where people have to call you on the telephone, and you have to, buzz downstairs. The buzzer doesn't work.
Yeah, that's why we really want to move to the layered access system, where it's a direct dial intercom system. The technology that we have at the majority of our developments is from the early 1990s. It's really outdated, antiquated. It's dependent upon Verizon phone lines, and also they're also tied to our locking systems at our doors, which are really simple electromagnetics. So there's no real redundancy within the door locking system. So that's why it's really important that that we garner support for the layered access program, and where we can get funding to upgrade our systems. But up until that point, we have the challenge of maintaining these antiquated systems. So we do. So it's really important what the chair brought up about response time, and that we're constantly going out there and repairing the systems until we can actually do the upgrade.
And just be clear, this is for the legacy.
Correct.
Not
Legacy.
the new.
I must be under the legacy ones
think
because I'm on
You
the
are.
first
You are.
floor.
You are.
And you know how they get in to see me?
Yeah.
I tell them, knock on the window. Knock on the window, and if I hear you knock on the window, I'll let you in. But that means the fire department is knocking on my window, the mailman is knocking on my window. Anybody who wants to get in the building
Emergency
and don't know the emergency, they're knocking on my window.
Yeah.
So you need to.
Absolutely, we agree, and we do feel that the
Just
layered
saying.
access is the solution to that issue.
Okay.
Could I ask one question about that, the doors and the intercom?
Sure.
Because I thought that Cyrus Vance allocated monies for the layered doors and stuff, and that y'all haven't received any of that money yet?
Yeah, so I don't know the status of that funding. I know that's intended for security enhancements at our developments, but we can provide you with an update.
Okay.
We have a signed MOU with the DA and the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. We have not received any of the dollars yet. We have provided them with sort of an early scope of where that money could be spent, but we haven't received the money yet. But you are absolutely right that It was
Okay.
intended for us.
All right, just asking.
And also for the tenants that are in the audience, you can certainly understand your frustration with the antiquated intercom system, but it's still important to please call it in so that we can respond and can make the repairs. So I'd like to move to item 5. So item 5 is also a requirement contract. This is for services to support our janitorial, really more or less physical labor work at our developments. The program is with the Center for Employment Opportunities. So with this program, folks that were formerly incarcerated that are now paroled, these are non-violent, non-sex offender offenders. We provide them with an opportunity to provide work on our grounds and in maintenance spaces. They do not do work within apartments. We've been this past year, we had some safety concerns with 9 developments where we had a garbage hoist. So we've taken the garbage hoist out of service. In order to move the garbage up out of these basement spaces, we need additional labor, and this contract supports that, and that's why we're requesting the change order to the contract. We were also bidding out a new contract that should be awarded within the next year. Authorization is requested to amend this agreement with Center for Employment Opportunities for work crews to perform various maintenance and janitorial tasks authorized by Board Resolution 12-11/21-5 and as amended by the Board Resolution 15-9/30-10 for initial 3-year term with 2 one-year renewal options to increase the not to exceed amount in order to fund the continued provision of services during the remainder of the initial 3-year term, which commenced on March 18th, 2013, and is continuing through March 17th, 2016, and for the first 1-year renewal option commencing on March 18th, 2016, and continuing through March 17th, 2017.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. So items 6, 7, 8, and 9 are for renewing our private management contracts. So these are contracts at our developments where the actual management of the site and the maintenance as well as janitorial is managed by an outside vendor. I know there had been a question about the number of developments that are involved in this program. So we have 26 developments totaling 2,553 apartment units. The 4 contracts, one is with BMA, the other 3 are with Kraus. Over the next year, so we're requesting a 1-year renewal option to exercise that. Within the next year, we're going to be bidding out new requests for proposals for new contracts. We're putting together a committee, reviewing the contract, seeing what's worked, what we can do better, and we'll be putting out a new procurement and bringing on. These vendors will certainly have an opportunity to bid, but we'll have new contracts before the board, hopefully within the next year. So I'd like to speak to present a BMA, and then I'd like to provide just a quick introduction on Kraus, because I know there were some concerns. So authorization is requested to amend the agreement with Building Management Associated, Inc. for private management services authorized by Board Resolution 13-1/30-10 as amended by Board Resolution 15-9/30-6 for initial 3-year term with either a 1-year or 2-year renewal option to increase the not to exceed amount in order to fund the 1-year renewal option for the continued provision of services commencing on April 1st, 2016 and continuing through March 31st, 2017. All right, so items 7, 8, and 9 are with Kraus Management. I know there were some concerns expressed about the performance with Kraus Management. Just high-level review of performance. Their developments that they've managed have scored in regard to our FOS 89, 97, and 90, 94. But we also know that isn't just a complete indicator of overall performance. There's certainly customer service and customer experience that needs to be performed at a high level by them as well. So I know there was concerns expressed. I met with Kraus as well as with the general manager recently to review those concerns. And one of the things that we're going to be implementing in April is they're going to be back on our work order system so that we're going to better be able to manage their work for us. And also I did visit a couple of sites. The actual physical condition of the properties I was impressed with. But once again, we're going to monitor performance and make sure they honor the commitments that they made to us certainly over the next year. Okay. So I'd like to go with item 7. Authorization is requested to amend the agreement with Kraus Management Incorporated for private management services authorized by Board Resolution 13-1/30-11 as amended by Board Resolution 15-9/30-7 for initial 3-year term with either a 1-year or 1 2-year renewal option to increase the not to exceed amount in order to fund the 1-year renewal option for the continued provision of services commencing on April 1st, 2016 and continuing through March 31st, 2017.
So they had not been on the work order system and now they
So,
will.
yeah, so the contracts, when these were bid out, one of the requirements was for the private management firms to have their own standalone systems, but they were to be able to communicate with us. We'd be able to get real-time reports, real-time monitoring. That was wasn't achievable over the, might have been something that we put in the contract that wasn't able to be accomplished by any of our private management firms. Work very closely with our IT department as well as operations and law department, through this issue, and we made a decision to bring them back onto our systems.
Let me just make a comment. In previous meetings, board member Victor Martinez would abstain, and I'm sorry, Gonzalez, someone else. He would abstain from voting for Kraus, and I never understood why. And he says that Kraus will have a good rating for FAR's inspection because anybody knows when the inspectors are coming, you're going to clean up your house and put everything in order. But then when there's no inspection, you're going to go back to, not doing what you should do. He said there's a high level of dissatisfaction with the residents. You did mention resident satisfaction. So they're putting on a good show when people are around, but when people are not there to inspect them, they're backsliding.
Yeah.
So instead of using Kraus management over and over again, can we either have them improve or either just give it to the other one? Building management has a good rating.
Yeah, so so first off, we met with them and went over the concerns. I visited the property unannounced with, not during a FOS inspection. The properties look good. We have staff that actually monitor the contract performance. Each one of the issues that were documented, that were brought to light, each one has been addressed with the exception of one regarding work orders, which will be addressed by our April conversion, and we're going to closely monitor their performance. Also, just in fairness, some of the dissatisfaction has to do with modernization of the the properties, which we know as an agency is a challenge for us overall with the the shortfall of capital funds to upgrade the property. So, for example, upgrading stoves, appliances, and in some areas replacing roofs.
Okay.
Authorization is requested to amend the agreement with Kraus Management for private management services authorized by Board Resolution 13-1/30-12 for initial 3-year term with either one 1-year or 1 2-year renewal option to increase the not to exceed amount in order to fund the 1-year renewal option for the continued provision of services commencing on April 1st, 2016 and continuing through March 31st, 2017. Item 9, authorization is requested to amend the agreement with Kraus Management for private management services authorized by Board Resolution 13-1/30-13 and as amended by Board Resolution 15-9/30-8 for initial 3-year term with either 1 1-year or 1 2-year renewal option to increase the not to exceed amount in order to fund the 1-year renewal option for the continued provision of services commencing on April 1st, 2016 and continuing through March 31st, 2017. Thank you very much.
Good morning, I'm Michael Rosen, Acting Executive Vice President for Capital Projects. I'll be presenting items 10 through 17. Item number 10 requests authorization to approve a change order to Marek Mechanical Incorporated in the amount of $864,000 to relocate a mobile boiler plant at Redfern Houses. These mobile boilers were converted from oil to gas. And at the time of the relocation, the FEMA negotiations and design were in progress. Now that design has been completed, it is clear that the best location for the permanent boiler plant that will be funded by FEMA is on the same location where the mobile boiler is right now. So we're requesting that Merrick relocate this mobile boiler so we can begin work on the permanent boiler plant. As I said, the design was ongoing when the boiler locations were selected. These mobile boilers must be relocated in order to begin the work. This work includes multiple mobile boilers there within this plant, and this work includes all of the gas piping, relocating, breaking down and relocating and installing all of the gas piping, water piping, the electrical components, as well as the trailers that house the boilers.
What will the service impact be for the residents in the relocation process?
So minimal. So there's a redundant system there right now. One boiler would be disconnected, moved to the new location. The installation would take place, and then the new boiler, the second boiler would be removed. I mean, there may be a temporary loss of heat during that time, but it's very minimal. We've done it before with minimal impact on the residents.
So I'm sure we are planning to do this, but I would just encourage just real good communication with residents when this process is happening. If it's possible to target it, not when it's a Arctic blast of a weekend, because I mean, we clearly know we have to relocate them so that we can start the actual permanent construction, which I think residents will be most happy about, but we don't want to have an interruption in service to the residents of that.
Absolutely, we will be planning to do this we'll plan to do it on days where the temperature is not scheduled to be very low. Sure. And our communication will be very strong. Our outreach team will be in communication with the residents, with property management well ahead and during this process.
Can I just give a shout out to your outreach team? They do a really great job of interacting and getting notices out to the residents.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I'll relay that to them. They'll definitely appreciate it,
You're
as
really
do I.
great.
Thank you. Item number 11, request authorization to increase the capacity of a contract with Air Tech Lab Incorporated for $11 million, $11,326,835.54. This is for the asbestos abatement, cleaning, and restoration of crawl spaces citywide. The original contract that had the capacity to address 148 crawl spaces located at 22 developments. The crawl spaces were not accessible prior to the release of this contract. A detailed environmental survey was completed, and the quantities of asbestos abatement and damaged fiberglass insulation increased dramatically. In order for the contractor to adequately satisfy the contract obligations, an increase in this capacity must be allocated to sufficiently perform the asbestos abatement, cleaning, and restoration of these crawl spaces. I want to mention that when the contract was originally put out, we established unit prices during that time. Those unit prices are used for any additional quantities, including this. So we have favorable unit prices that were negotiated at the beginning of this contract. The other thing that I want to mention is that by doing it the way we did, it allowed us to get out and begin doing sanitizing and cleaning of multiple crawl spaces. This will address the very worst crawl spaces in the developments that were affected by Sandy. This is what's called Category B work by FEMA. That is, covers emergency and urgent work. The way Category B FEMA work is structured, we work with FEMA to do an estimate, define the scope of work, then we go out and do the work. Once the work is done, whatever the quantities were, we go back to FEMA and are reimbursed dollar for dollar for this.
Okay, Michael, you had said it's 22 development. You supposed to give me a list of those? You remember when I spoke to you the other day?
We have the list. I'll provide it.
Thank
I'll
you.
provide it to everybody.
I believe that on the numbers.
Okay, other questions?
Item number 12, request authorization to approve a change order to RSN Construction Company Incorporated in the amount of $10 million. This is for work at Taylor White. The original contract was for brickwork and associated facade work at Taylor White and Wyckoff Gardens. The work at Taylor White is 99% completed. This $10 million, I misspoke, I said Taylor White, it's actually the work will be done at Wyckoff. The $10 million will be allocated to Wyckoff. The engineer of record, Superstructures, requested laboratory tests and probes to determine the structural stability at various components of the existing brickwork. Those findings concluded that the three high-rise buildings at Wyckoff require a complex remediation procedure to ensure the long-term stability of these buildings. This change order was negotiated using the unit prices that were established in the original contract where applicable. The cost of the work is $10 million, which includes an allowance to address the local loss cycles and file these buildings at safe with the Department of Buildings. Funding for this change order is being provided by the mayor's office, and we were notified yesterday that funding is in place. This work will commence as soon as weather permits. Item number 13, request authorization to award a requirement contract to Romewood Scaffolding, the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, in the amount of $19,586,375. The scope of this work this is a requirements contract for the exterior restoration of 31 buildings at various developments citywide, which are identified through DOB Local 11 Cycle 7 and 8. Originally, we had come to the board, we withdrew 2 contracts from the board last board meeting. Those contracts were citywide, but did not identify the developments. Those contracts were also for over 700 days. This contract is reduced to 480 days. So this contract covers 31 buildings, and work will be completed within 480 days on all of that. Roma is a woman-owned business enterprise that has been in operation since 2001. They've performed 2 contracts with NYCHA as prime contractor, valued at $101,586,892.88. We request authorization to award this contract. Item number 14 is similar scope as item number 13. We request authorization to enter into a development-specific requirements contract to bike rent contracting and builders in the amount of $14,498,465.51. The scope of work is identical to the previous item. This work covers 19 buildings at various developments citywide.
And the previous was
31.
31.
Item number 15, request authorization to award a contract to Project I Consultants in the amount of $1,068,000. The scope of work consists of lobby entrance doors at 10 buildings. The existing entrance and exit doors are in poor condition. Most of the intercoms and hardware are malfunctioning, which compromise the security of our residents. This work provides for the entrance improvements at all 10 buildings. The scope of work, but is not includes but not limited to entrance doors, which will be replaced with new stainless steel doors. The front entrance doors are stainless steel. The rear entrance are hollow aluminum doors. frames and associated hardware, the removal and replacement of all the exit doors, and asbestos abatement. Project I Consultants has been in business since 2004. This is their first contract with NYCHA, but they've performed similar work with various government agencies, such as City University of New York and the New York State Office of General Services, each valued at over $1 million. Reference checks on the past work was conducted and found satisfactory. The term of this contract is 365 days. The VNC has been requested and is pending. No contract will be awarded until the VNC is approved.
Questions?
No.
Okay.
Item number 16, requests authorization to enter into an agreement with Simplex Grinnell LP in the amount of $50 million. The authority has a need for work for the need for the work of installation and upgrades of fire and smoke alarm systems at developments, and obtained written authorization from the Department of Corrections to piggyback off the Department of Corrections contract, which is cost effective. Utilizing this interagency agreement reduces the cost associated with bidding 3 separate contracts for design, the building, and the maintenance. If each phase was bid separately, the entire approval process would require approximately 2 years or more. Moreover, there's cost savings by using this piggyback contract in the amount of 20% that we receive for all of the unit prices. The scope includes the design, build, maintenance of fire and smoke alarm systems on an as-needed basis. The design and build work shall include design, installation, integration of the fire and smoke alarm systems. The maintenance work for the installed fire and smoke alarm systems will consist of preventive maintenance and remedial maintenance, as well as ongoing moves and additions and changes of equipment and software upgrades to the basic system. Simplex is the sole manufacturer of these smoke and fire alarms that will be installed on an as-needed basis, having one manufacturer responsible for the standardization and support and for the integrity of all fire, smoke, and safety solutions and service eliminates the need for multiple proprietary manufacturers.
This is just for developments, not for community spaces, other community centers, commercial spaces.
I believe it is just for the developments, but I will double check.
Is there a reason why we don't do more of these kinds of piggyback contracts?
I think we do that. We look to do them where it makes sense. There was a point where we had stopped doing that for some time, but I know now in capital projects we look to see where there's opportunities to piggyback if it's favorable to us.
I think we did that under IT, am I correct? We used piggyback contracts with other city agencies, so that we have done that in the past. I like the 20% discount, and I like that they manufacture them, they maintain them. It's like, they do the whole package. So that's a good thing.
And did you say something about Section 3 hires?
I did not, but I will. So there will be Section 3 hires. Again, this is based on an as-needed basis. So you can't predict the Section 3 hires before. However, as each authorization goes out to do work, it will include Section 3 hires.
They're required to provide
Correct.
what their Section 3 hiring plan is.
Michael, could you do a little clarification? The chair says these are for various developments. Is that mean in the actual apartments of the tenants, or what? Or it's just
No, these are not in the apartments. These are in the
for the
building.
development?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted clarification on it.
Item number 17, request authorization to award a contract to Navilis Tile Incorporated, doing business as Navilis Contracting, in the amount of $51,333,000 for restoration associated with the Hurricane Sandy recovery program at Smith Houses. Smith Houses consists of 12 buildings. However, 4 of the buildings were declared damaged by FEMA. This work will address the restoration and recovery at those 4 buildings. The scope of work that includes, but is not limited to, the installation of standby gas generators on the roofs of the damaged buildings, as well as replacement of electrical service feeders at each building. The new electrical rooms with metering and distribution equipment will be relocated to the roof of these buildings. There will also be flood barriers to prevent future storm damage to the affected buildings, full roof replacement at these buildings, new site lighting, including underground feeders and poles throughout the entire development. So the work on the buildings itself is limited to the 4 damaged buildings. The lighting is the entire development. It also includes replacement of damaged mechanical equipment, interior finishes, doors, hardware, concrete stair and partitions in the affected areas. Nablus has been in business since 1987. They performed 5 projects as prime contractor, valued at over $108 million. They've performed 16 contracts as subcontractor, valued at over $151 million. The VNC has been requested and is pending. This contract won't be awarded until the VNC is received. And the term of this contract is 403 days.
You're gonna prioritize the work order, you know, what you're gonna do first, what you're gonna do next, because if you're gonna put generators on the roofs sort of have to come
Yes,
first.
absolutely. So that's taking place right now, is developing the schedule of the work. It'll be done in order of necessity, and also in what makes the most sense from a construction standpoint. For instance, the roofs will be done before the generators are placed on the roof.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Karina Tota, Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, and I'm presenting items 18 through 20, which request authorization for the appointments to NYCHA's Audit Committee. The Audit Committee supports the board in fulfilling its oversight responsibilities, and it does so by offering objective advice on NYCHA's governance, risk management, and internal control processes to ensure that they're well designed and supporting the authority's objectives. The committee's primary responsibilities are to review the independent auditor's audit plan, recommending the approval of the single audit with audited financial statements, and reviewing NYCHA's internal audit plan. I am requesting authorization to approve 4 members of the audit committee, beginning with the co-chairs. Requesting item 18 is requesting authorization to approve the chair's appointment of Derek Cephas and Victor Gonzalez as co-chairs of the audit committee. Item 19 is requesting authorization to approve the appointment of Richard Quo as independent member. Richard Quo has served the city of New York for over 2 decades and for several mayors at the Office of Management and Budget, as well as the Energy Office. He is a management executive with firsthand experience serving New York's minority, senior, and immigrant communities. Item 20 is authorization to approve the chair's appointment of Mark Kaplan as independent member of the audit committee. Mark has been a member of Skadden Arps Corporate Finance Group for nearly 35 years and has also served as chairman of the New York City Audit Committee, as well as co-chairman of the Board of Education's Audit Advisory Committee. He is a trustee of various organizations, including the New York Academy of Medicine, Bard College, WNET Channel 13, and the Institute for International Education.
Questions? No. Thank you.
Madam Chair, 20 items were presented for board approval. Do I have a motion to accept?
To accept all items as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a motion.
So I move that the members be authorized to meet in executive session today to discuss the litigation matter of New York City Housing Authority versus Federal Insurance Company et al., the Great American Insurance Company of New York, Maiden Specialty Insurance Company, and Bedivere Insurance Company, One Beacon Insurance Company, Traders and General Insurance Company.
Second motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you.
If I may ask everyone if they can proceed outside, so we can proceed with our executive session. Thank you.
Look at